Throughout, throughout the world, Black people are slowly waking up to the realities of life and are in desperate need of guidance and direction to bring about positive change for their freedom and redemption. Black Star Movement Association aims to fulfill that need and presents Conscious Black Chat. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that's about being conscious and black. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. Welcome. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I deal with conscious and black. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. Welcome. Aquaba. We divided us amongst ourselves and colonized our lands. We know pain and suffering, but yet we still stand. Conscious Black Africans, Black woman and man, one God, one aim, one destiny. Redemption is at hand. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that's about being conscious and black. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. Welcome. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I deal with conscious and black. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious Black Chat, Conscious Black Chat. Welcome, Aquaba.
Yes, yes. Conscious Black Chat. Yeah, man, real thing we're dealing with over here. All the time, every time. Yeah, greetings and salutations, one and all. Prophet Brian here, otherwise known as Ras I Am, Black Star Movements Association. Let us guide our destiny. Conscious Black Strength and Power. Yeah, they are in the place. Yeah, man. Hope everybody's having a great evening out there. Today, Sunday, November 3rd. Whether you're on the continent of Africa, whether you're in the Caribbean, Europe, the Americas, blessed love wherever you find yourself, all right? Yeah. Salamta. Um, you know, Atese, Madasi, Akwaba. Yeah, and various other tongues. Just giving it a little time here to see if any other ones come into the chat as usual, just so we could give ones the opportunity to listen in live and comment as we go along. So in the meantime, between time, I think it's appropriate we just let a few tunes go and run, and we're doing it what it do. Yeah. Well, we have to give thanks for the one and only His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First of the Ethiopian Empire. Our own divine majesty, our Christ King, and Queen with the Royal Empress men in there. And we do give thanks to the royal coronation commemoration that took place on November 2nd, just yesterday, 1930, 2nd of November. So we're just commemorating that, for the whole week, for the whole month, because it's a very auspicious time in the sense of, the Black Christ, the Black King, crowned, and basically awoken up a whole lot of us in the diaspora, the Western world, and in Africa as well, to the reality ourselves. So have to put that out there. Give thanks to the kings of kings, the lords of lords, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, and his virtuous empress, men in there, the queens of queens, just more strength and reality all the time. Gonna touch on a little bit about His Imperial Majesty, just a quick summary of some of the works that the King has manifested in regards to reaching out to us scattered Black African children, and just the overall visionary towards Africans' freedom and redemption, to basically come out on from under imperialism and colonial rule. But give thanks, stay tuned, we'll have vibes, because we're nice. Welcome, welcome, Aquaba, Conscious Black Chat, the place where we discuss everything conscious and black, setting black people on track. If you were gone, welcome back. Yeah, just a few more minutes before we get into this well needed, powerful, and impactful discussion about the A.D.O.T.S and Rastafari Nation Building and what we need to do going forward. Yeah, stay tuned. It's going to be, some real truths and reality that we have to discuss here to clear and pave the way for the new wine. For those who are about scripture, there's a verse that says new wine can't go into old vessels, which is basically a parable that's suggesting that, you know, not necessarily old per se, but pre-existing vessels that is set in their ways of a specific sort. They're not really set, or they're preoccupied with old ways, then, if you will, for a lack of a better word, set in their ways. So it's very hard for new wine. And when we're saying wine, we're not saying a liquor, but wine in the sense of, spirits. New spirit, new vision can't really go into old vessels with old spirits and old visions. And it's not so much because they're old, but more so stuck in their ways, rigid and dogmatic. So that's just the reality of things. So we can't let that be a deterrent. We can't make it be a stumbling block. While we always show love and respect to the elders, who's helped pave the way in their time, real elders, ones of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding who know themselves, we can't afford to be held back on the road towards black empowerment, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and success. Until like the honorable Marcus Mosier Garvey said, until the red, black, and green is planted on all the mountaintops of Africa, symbolically, we can't stop moving forward. Forward ever, backward non existent. Give thanks. So go and stay tuned. Give it another 2 minutes. Yeah, I think that's about it. Once again, greetings and salutations, Aquaba. Welcome, one and all. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, evening, with your family to spend it here with myself, Prophet Brian, otherwise known as Russ. I am of the Black Star Movement Association. Uh, you know, when I organized and coordinated the Black Star Movement Association, it roughly was about 2011, early 2011. I think it was around February, after coming back from Ethiopia there in 2010. And I was so thrilled and joyful, giving thanks for reaching safely to Ethiopia, Africa, Addis Ababa, touching in Shashamani, seeing some brothers and sisters there that I knew from the Western world, others coming in from Jamaica, the Americas, and all over, and basically throughout the Ethiopian nation. They were there, seeing the Amharic writing script all over the place. We might be used to the alphabet, the Greco-Roman alphabet sequence, but it was a different scenario, complete different world. I was familiar with the Amharic from here in the Western world, familiar with the Ethiopian Orthodox, and know how the Amharic script looked, one and two words. But to be there live and direct in Ethiopia was beautiful. Traveling from Addis Ababa to Shashamani, roughly about give and take the roads, between, I would say, 4 or 5 hours. And it was a great trip. It was a great trip when you see all the different mountains and, you know, land as far as the eye can see, and those different kind of shrub trees. And it's like you're on a different planet. Great visuals, had a great time, passed by some lakes, stopped in Shashamani there, went to the Taba. short for the Tabernacle, set up there by members of the EABIC, Ethiopian Africa Black International Congress, pardon me, and saw the different mansions, as they're known as, or different sects, if you will, of the Rastafari order, the Rastafari Nation. So that was 12 tribe, Nyabingi, and various other ones who I guess hold on to a neutral stance to just say they're Rastafari. And yeah, it was a beautiful thing, a beautiful experience. I spent just a month there, and you know, traveling black, safe travel. It was beautiful. I was filled with a sense of accomplishment, reaching to the motherland, Ethiopia specifically, as it was or is one of the long-standing desires of the Rastafari culture to make our way back, not just to Africa, but to Ethiopia specifically. So it was a joy making that trod, that pilgrimage, that migration, for some repatriating, not coming back out to the Western world or other places. But it was great just touching the motherland once again for the first time. And coming back, I had to just examine myself, examine the situations, examine some of the history that I know of, some of the experience I've had in the Western world, based on what the world and myself come to know as Rastafari, roots and culture, the movement, the man, pardon me, and the whole mission of Rastafari, who we are, what we stand for, a lot of misconceptions, a lot of misinformation, miseducation, and as a result, a lot of missed opportunities, a lot of hurdles, a lot of setbacks. And clarity is required. Clarity is required because we have to set the record straight. We always have to revise ourselves, go back to the drawing board, in any walk of life we take when we're striving to accomplish a goal, striving for perfection, let's say, as a standard, or even excellence, we have to always revalue ourselves, take account, look at the books, look at the record, see how we are perceived, see if there's anything we could do better, see if there's any mistakes and correct those mistakes so we could move on to fulfill our goal and our vision and destiny ultimately. So, coming back, you know, I designed and organized the Black Star Movements Association. Initially, it's a Back to Africa with a Practical Approach Movements Association, seeking out like minded people with a desire to go home to Africa. And that didn't just include Rastafari people, that included every and any conscious Black people that had the desire to go to Africa, hence the A.D.O.T.S, African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. And that was the position I was holding as a Rastafari, a Baba Shanti, uh, pro-black, pan-African, and just a black man. And when I went about communicating that, like I still do to others, sometimes it's met with a lack of understanding, unfortunately, a lack of care, dogmatic beliefs, and yeah, sometimes a kind of a half-baked feedback. And I do my best to make sure that I am clear, within pointing out the purpose of what the Black Star Movement stands for and represents, and the need that it aims to fulfill. Uh, Rastafari, Rastafari, Holy Emmanuel I Selassie I Jah. Rastafari. Yeah, I have to give thanks to the beloved Rastafari always, the man. the divine man, my Father, my God, my righteous King, Christ. Yeah, no sky God thing, but God, that Father Spirit manifested as a man with the government on his shoulders to rule within principle and morality, a righteous God, a righteous King, fulfilling history and prophecy. David, greater son once again, who sit up on the throne of David, who came to Ethiopia through way of Sudan up the river Nile, while other Israelites also came from the Arabian Peninsula from places such as Yemen and eventually making up the way to the Ethiopian highlands, the Horn of Africa there, passing through Khartoum, passing to Sudan, going up to what we would know as modern day Eritrea, ancient Aksumite kingdom, until, modern day Ethiopia. And we give thanks for that. We give thanks for the moving of the ark, the resting place of the ark, and what Ethiopia from that time till this time represents to us as Rastafari. Bear in mind, Ethiopia is not just the political bordered Ethiopia that we know it, what it is today, but you had the Ethiopian Empire that consisted of the Djibouti, which is a separate republic country today, Eritrea, which was previously annexed to Ethiopia, which is its own republic today. And as a result, Ethiopia is landlocked. We see what's going on now in the news is Ethiopia is trying to negotiate some terms there, even with Italy, Somaliland. Basically, to carve out a space for some sort of open to the Red Sea, where they could have access to the water and have some ports there, because it's very instrumental in their land, how it affects their import, their exports, and they're doing that as they build their dam, and they're having issues there with the whole Egypt scenario. But that is that. But Ethiopia stretched from there. It included Eritrea, and it also included, especially in the ancient world, it mostly referred to Sudan. When I traveled to Ethiopia in 2010, or to Africa, pardon me, Sudan was one nation. It was just Sudan. So I was glad I was able to experience that. But today, if you look on the map, you have Sudan and then you have South Sudan. So the southern part broke away, the southern tribes, and now you have a Sudan, so another country has been added to the conglomerate of African countries. So now we're at 54 states, and there is about one or two, one in North Africa, with the sort of Arab leagues there, looking to become a republic and get recognized there to become their own country. And there was a other nation as well. Oh, the Italian Somaliland. Yes, they're looking for recognition as well from other countries to basically be formally recognized as a country. So I guess Africa's growing in that aspect. But Ethiopia, basically, the Djibouti, Eritrea, Sudan, and if you look at the ancient maps, Ethiopia at one point consisted of being all of Africa. We've heard about Abyssinia, which is an ancient name for Ethiopia as well, and we heard about Land, and we heard about Libya, various names for Africa, but Ethiopia was one of those names. And a large part of us, we're considered or being called Negroes in the Western world before the African American, Caribbean, African, and the Negro and these things, or alongside the Negro, we were called Ethiopians because when they were considering us and saying Ethiopians, it was not so much like the Ethiopians that you'd meet today in modern day Ethiopia, which call themselves the Hibisha, but more So Nubians and Cushites and Kemites, that tall, that very dark skinned black Dinka, Nilotic tribes sort of people. So, we were considered Ethiopians, even the Americas. And the Atlantic Ocean was known as the Ethiopic Sea. You could see it on the old maps that there's testimony towards some of the history. So that's one thing to note when you're studying history, geography, and these things. Names and places change over time, and also even facts, because as information is gathered and more information is given, even the facts change. So we have to be mindful. We have to study, have a great vocabulary, study the etymology of words, and the history of things, including the words, for where it started, where it derived from, and how it morphed into different names. We know the English is a kind of a hybrid language because it's a cocktail mix of various different languages. The Latin, Romanized Greeks, if you will, Latin speaking countries such as Spain, Spanish, pardon me, Portuguese. Yeah, these tongues have a lot to do with the English that relate back to the Romanized, Greco-Roman English, which we know is a language derived from Rome's relationship with Egypt there, using the Egyptian alphabet and some of the glyphics to carve out a sort of a language-based system. And we see how English has taken over the world after Francophone, which is France. Anglophone makes up the second largest colonial occupiers, influencers of Africa till the date. While some states, have their independence from the British Empire now, Britain. Some are still Commonwealth nations, such as South Africa, and have still some relationships with the British Commonwealth, whether it's voluntarily or just leaving things as it was since the colonial land grab days. And it is where it is. But Ethiopia, great history that goes back into the ancient world. The upper lands, you have the Aksum, you have the Damat, various different names covering specific timelines in terms of that geographical history. And it's good to know because a lot of our history, River Nile history, Ethiopia hosts one of the Nile rivers, contributing one of the largest amounts of the water. There's different contributaries to the River Nile. We have in Uganda there where we have, I believe it's the White Nile as well, Ethiopia with the Blue Nile, and two of them eventually converge together and what would be Sudan and go all the way, you know, to Lower Egypt, which is going north, until it empties into the Mediterranean. And a lot of history, Kushite Empire, Nubians, the land of Nubia, Kemet, Egypt. Yeah, it's all coming from that side. And when the fall of Kemet took place in, 300 BCs, or the declining, they followed the Sahel route, which is an ancient trade route that links East Africa with West Africa. So even some of the West African people today are Kushites, Nubians, from time of old, descendants that has migrated from the Nile Valley over there to the West Africa, what we know before as Guinea. Now it has turned into Ghana, Liberia, Nigeria, and all these places. Um, you know, we know people right there from the Niger Congo, Mali Empire, Ghanaian Old Empire, and all these places. Keeping with certain royal cultures and traditions of the same similitude of ancient Kemet and ancient Egypt. So we know Africa was one. Before all the countries and nations, it was basically kingdoms and empires and territories. Yeah, that's how Africa was basically divided and constituted the different families. But Ethiopia, we give thanks to the kings of kings who hold on to such a vast history. And His Imperial Majesty once again was crowned in 1930, the 2nd of November. And to us as Rastafari, that was symbolic and representative of a great quakening, a great awakening to our minds. 1930s, if you could picture yourself in that time, if you will, it was a time of slavery, racism. We're catching hell from the white man in the Western world. Full British colony was Jamaica in the Caribbean, along with the Spanish colonies in the Caribbean, South America, and the Americas. And Black people were seen as nothing. We're just slaves, permanent slaves, workers, working and even being replaced by indentured slaves coming from India and China, Ireland, and various other parts of the world, as a lot of fight and rebellion, standing up for justice was going on because we're advocating for change. And slavery was abolished on paper in 1834. It was by the British Empire, and though it was on papers, that was like the slave trade, bringing ships over from Africa with slaves. But on those specific colonies, people were growing their slaves in house, working and slaving their slaves, and slavery was still very much alive until roughly in the late 1950s onward. Um, Haitian Revolution there in Haiti represent one of the first, rising for independence as the mighty Haitian nations fought against the French, the Napoleons, and Napoleon Bonaparte and the whole French army there, and won their freedom in Haiti, but have been catching hell other sin ever since to basically have representation, development, and a stabilized nation where they could grow into something formidable. Every election, it's like civil unrest, and a lot of it is as a result of a fight for power, chronic poverty, chronic death, and Haiti was held in debt to France as a result of the revolution. And they were ostracized as a nation from other colonial nations because the blacks have taken over and the Europeans weren't having that. So no one was quick to really do business with Haiti in a good and respectable way because you're seen as Negroes. And no, we don't want to give you a leg up or a fair chance. We want to keep you subdued. We want to keep you under hardship. And ultimately, the colonizers would still love to go back and colonize and take over and run Haiti, if not directly, but indirectly as a result of neocolonialism, putting certain people in place and influencing the nation indirectly because Haiti still holds a lot of valuable resources there in the Western world. So that is of interest to certain foreign powers. But Rastafari, the crowning of Rastafari was awakening for us, especially I could speak on within the Jamaican history. You know, Honorable Marcus Garvey was trotting through the earth in them times as a whirlwind and waking up black people to the reality of themselves with the United Negro Improvement Association, traveling all over the world, giving his lectures, making his speeches, going up through Panama there and making his way till he eventually arrived in New York, Harlem, which is his mainstay, where a lot of lectures, speeches, marches on the road, putting on display black excellence, a lot of business, the Negro World newspaper, and various things to bring light to the black people. Examples within an economical sense of how black people need to do for self, use their intelligence, what other man do, man can do, and basically grab hold of our lives and destiny and walk within a light of truth, morality, and just know that we can do it. We can do it attitude. And we as Rastafari, originally a lot of us was Garveyites, coming springing from the Garveyites, which is that black conscious movement towards a black reality. And 1930, the crowning of His Imperial Majesty looked to the east to the crowning of a black king, which was of prophecy within the black Rastafari culture, and it was fulfilled with His Imperial Majesty was crowned roughly like a year, 2 year later after those words were uttered. Um, Black people were seen as nothing all throughout the world, and to hear and get back word that a black man was being crowned as king while the rest of Africa was subdued, the whole King Leopold land grab situation, everybody colonized from south to west to central, a lot of everywhere in the east except Ethiopia, you know, everywhere in the US you're seeing no coloreds allowed, no negro. The foot of the white man were on the necks of black people, right? So that is the reality of that situation there. So to hear that a black man is being crowned king, 72 foreign nations came from Europe, Asia, all over the place to basically delegates representatives to pay their homage to this great empire of the Ethiopian emperor and give homage to the king of kings, the conquering lion, and bear witness to this great ceremonial coronation of his crowning, and featured in the New York Times, newspapers throughout the world, the crowning of His Imperial Majesty. So when Rastafari or, Garveyites or Howlites, before we even took on the name of Rastafari, we caught wind and see what was going on. Rastas were not the one that called His Imperial Majesty Kings of Kings, Lords of Lords initially. That was within the Ethiopian culture and their history of being Hebrew Israelites, that have their history there with Jerusalem, the Solomonic dynasty. Queen of Sheba is known as an Ethiopian that went and met with King Solomon, and the two of them meeting resulted in the birthing of a child, which was Menelik the first, who went on to become, the king of the Ethiopian Empire there, ruling from Sudan and covering the geographical location of their upper Ethiopia all the way over again, once again to Yemen, not merely just the Ethiopian highlands as we know in this time, Djibouti, Eritrea, but all the way ruling from the original Ethiopia, which is Sudan, all of that region. They're up into the Horn of Africa, the land of Punt. So, once again, we have to know the geography and know how things change. How we see it today is not necessarily how it was yesterday. But we woke up to this reality, downtrodden black man and woman catching hell from the white world. And now we have somebody that is respected, somebody who demands respect, not by vocalizing it, but just the wealth of history, knowledge, and the prestige of Ethiopia as black people. A lot of our kingdoms in Africa, the Europeans duped us backwards. We're monkeys, nothing representative of anything good, and that was a lie. But Ethiopia still held their to their prestige, being isolated up into the Ethiopian highlands. And formerly Aksum of the Aksumite Empire was one of the largest trading posts and ruling kingdoms and empire during their time from roughly first century BC up into a little bit past the first millennia, say 1200 or 900, let's say AD. Yeah. So with that, they know the name and it rings through various circles, and various nations from Rome or whatnot was looking to do trade with the Oxumite Empire to find trade routes through the Red Sea there directly to the Mediterranean, and on the opposite side, the outlet to the Indian Ocean, a quicker route to India. So, the Ethiopian kingdom also was never colonized as we know it. The only African nation that wasn't colonized. You tend to hear there was two, the other being Liberia, but we know that Liberia was an American colony. Maybe initially it wasn't occupied during the um, land grab situation of the Berlin Conference, but it was an American colony. So to say that it has never been colonized is not completely true. So you could look into that as well. But the kings of kings, lords of lords of Ethiopia has come, Prince of Peace, light unto this world, various titles and salutations attributed to the kings, fulfilling Revelation, another biblical verse, Ethiopia with its own version of, Christianity there since, first century AD. And as I mentioned, even before that, with the Solomonic dynasty, we know that Moses took on an Ethiopian woman within biblical verse. So all that is added into the Ethiopian experience. So we being readers of the Bible, in slavery, we learned to read through the church because the colonizer wanted to indoctrinate us with the white Jesus concepts, honor thy slave master, and various little funny little dubious things they align within the scripture to keep us under control and make us passive. So as a result, they, you know, missionaries and whatnot, the pastor, the clergy, sought to program us, which we would call education, and teach us what is what. And while reading that, we still had our mind for ourselves, even though we're in bondage. That's the only thing we had left, was to be able to think freely, though it wasn't all of us. But for those of us that were wise, we basically, see the reality of kings of kings, lords of lords. One of the first mention of a nation in the scriptures from Genesis, it's Ethiopia. And then putting all that together, seeing what we've been through, hearing about the Israelites, them being scattered to the four corners of the earth and these things, and seeing us fit the bill of being Israelites. And now we have a legitimate Jew, a legitimate black Jew, not merely just us out here reading the scripture and saying, I'm an Israelite, but formally tradition, culture, historical um, realities of being a Jew, and now being crowned as emperor and black, king of kings, lords of lords, and it's being promulgated to the whole entire world, newspaper and all these things, while we as the black nation in Africa, outside Africa, is catching hell. Mind you, we didn't get any independence yet. Maybe just the declaration, proclamation, you know, emancipation, but we're still catching hell. Independence didn't come all the way from 1930, a good, in Jamaica, anyways, a good 32 years later. And we took on the name of His Imperial Majesty. That's why we were called Rastafari. And we wear our locks to pay homage, respect, and to take on the identity of the natural man from creation and giving credence to our King, Christ King, that has come. We were already, some of us, looking for Africa, especially through the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Garvey and other prophets. We're already looking towards a black narrative and seeing ourselves as black and want to build on that because we're catching hell from the white man, you know? Um, Even much like today, but to a lesser degree, the proof is in the pudding of the experience, you know? Abuse, austerity, can't vote, can't do anything, can't use washroom, Rosa Parks sort of situation, can't roll on the bus with us, lack of education, lack of land, various things. We're catching hell on every level, all levels when it comes to our existence. Not much different from today, but to a lesser degree. But just the same. And, seeing the king crown gave us self-esteem. We took on onto that trod, and knowing that is not just a mere man, but God incarnate. We heard about the white man that they give us was God, and we heard about all the prophets were these white mans and that. And while the said white man is kicking us in our slaves, the clergy had slaves, the pastors had slaves. So they're just buttering us to keep us subdued, and even in all of Africa was colonized as a result of the spreading of Christianity, the spreading of Islam, and it's still there on the people's psyche to this day. No improvement more than that, no unity more than that, but yet everybody is still praising this white man, praising this Arab man, and it's kind of ridiculous. We're not seeing the real change. But His Imperial Majesty, soon as after being crowned, it was a great upset, for the evil white world, because by 1935, World War II was showing its ugly face. Italy was formally defeated in the Battle of Ottawa by the Honorable Menelik II, was had malice and decided that they wanted to roll on the new king because Menelik had passed at this time. Empress Taitu, Menelek's daughter, had passed at this time, and she was basically holding on to the throne as empress to basically govern. And this gave Rose rise to Rastafari, basically to be heir to the throne, and eventually, becoming Ras and the various channel, plenipotentiary, all the way up to, the kings of kings, crown informally. And Italy was just like, yo, to, was it Vito Mussolini decided they're going to take Ethiopia for themselves and bring it under the Italian kingdom. And they came, they dropped bombs. It was a whole situation there of lies. The League of Nations was there, where that Haile Selassie became a member of, years prior, as a result of abolishing slavery formally in Ethiopia that was still going on, and abolishing the slavery that gave, the king the ability to join the League of Nations there, in Geneva, amongst the other nations of Europe and whatnot. And it's the only black nation that was permitted entry because everybody else was basically under colonization and wasn't even free. And as a result, the king was representative of all African, all free people, free nations that wanted to stand for a right, and he didn't get any right in the League of Nations. Um, they were more for the Italian interests and was undermining the Ethiopian people's interests. The king himself had to go to, foreign nation, Geneva there, and, appeal for justice within the league, and there was none to be had. He let them know, a piece of his mind, the injustice, what's going on, and what they're doing is going to have consequences because what you do to one people, you'll eventually reach your doorstep, and it did. because the Nazi regime, Hitler rose up and basically was burning all of Europe, you know, and reached all the way up to England there, Austria, Hungary, all of these places were catching fire as a result. And they said Mussolini was one of the allies of the Nazi regime. So Italy was an ally of the Nazi regime. Let's not forget that. And yeah, it was met with a great loss of life. You heard about the Holocaust. Yeah, a lot of people died. And you hear about the reparations as a result of the Holocaust. You hear what's going on in the Middle East now, as the Ashkenazi Jews, let's say, is basically fighting for their right to occupy the land over the other preoccupying Palestinians. Um, we as Black people, we have our Holocaust as well, and it's even more long-standing, more damaging, more horrendous than any other Holocaust. Not to really undermine anybody's Holocaust, but we have to speak specifically to our situation. The Black genocide, the Black Holocaust of the transatlantic slave trade saw millions died during the trade, and millions more died during the hundreds of years of slavery, Jim Crow, and various things. And we continue to see the effects of it. Some would want to say, oh, slavery is a long time and this and that. Slavery, colonization is like a nuclear bomb. If you could go to Chernobyl there in Russia and whatnot, there's still places affect. If you bring the reader for nuclear energy, you'll see a bit going off because what? Radioactive waves, pollution is being detected. So it's the same for us as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. If there was the meter, you could interview some Black people, see where their minds are at. The meter would be going off to detect that there is still the effects as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and the slavery that's affecting us, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in the Western world, you know. But going along with the story, His Imperial Majesty represented so much to us as the Black race and still represents so much for us as the Rastafari faithfuls who looks towards going to Ethiopia, because the main aspects in theology of being Rastafari is to know that His Imperial Majesty is the Almighty God incarnate to rule and live amongst man in the flesh and set forth a kingdom and order, the New Jerusalem, the Eden, the heaven on earth, as we know Africa was and is to be and become. So that is real Rastafari faith. And yeah, His Imperial Majesty is the only Black African leader that sets forth a land. While some will sympathize with us, apologize, some will say, Rastaman, we like you, we love you, we like your music. None is really taking that great step to say, hey, Rasta man, come back home. We're brothers and sisters. We love you. And here's something tangible that you could get a start. You know? His Imperial Majesty went above and beyond with the Shashamani land grant after World War II, with receiving assistance from those in Canada, America, and the Caribbean. One's volunteered to go and fight. One sent packages of supplies, provisions to help with the war, and just even speaking out and protesting in the streets against the attack on Ethiopia by the Italian Mussolini regime there. So as a result, our gracious king um, sent forth a delegation representative in America to formally receive and accept us through the Ethiopian World Federation, which is the federation set forth by His Imperial Majesty for all Ethiopians. Ethiopians in the diaspora. And this doesn't mean Ethiopia to say you're born Ethiopian, but Ethiopian in the sense of saying all black people of the diaspora. It was a form and a way of uniting us to come in under one umbrella, how we could basically stand in unison to the world, advocate for Africa, freedom and redemption from colonialism and imperialism, and even for those who desire return into Africa. And land was provided for 500 hectares specifically, which is amounts to about a thousand so acres of land in Shashamani, which is south of Addis Ababa. There for wants to get their trade, their skills, and prepare. Your skills could go towards aid in Ethiopia, aid in Africa, but most naturally aid in yourselves, because we know Africa is a developing continent, developing nations. So if you could come in here and help yourself to build and do other things, and while doing so, help out some of your brothers and sisters who are already here throughout your experiences in the America. You come to Ethiopia, do the same. Called Blacks Build the Americas. We build the Caribbean. We build Europe. So why not we build Africa? So it was greatly received. But throughout the years, um, either it wasn't communicated well, or some people kept it secret, or there's some misunderstanding, or a lot of people didn't really join the EWF. It was largely the Rastafarian nation community as a result of our love for His Imperial Majesty, and His Imperial Majesty making us who we are, which is sons and daughters of Rastafari. So we occupied some of the positions there in the EWF, and we have the desire and went over to Ethiopia there and occupied the Shashamani. Now, as a result of in the 1960s going up to 70s, late 60s to 70s, where Mengistu of Ethiopia there orchestrated a coup against His Imperial Majesty and a hostile takeover. A lot of the Ethiopian royal family was jailed and subsequently killed, and yeah, His Imperial Majesty was under house arrest, and a lot of shady things go on there, and a lot of cloudy area. But it's been the last time His Imperial Majesty was seen or heard from. You hear different tales about the king being dead, and various numerous times you see in funeral being held to the king with taller bones than the man's original height of about 5'2". A very kind of odd situations there that Rastas paid that no mind, and we still hold to the king is not dead. But irrespective of that, we know it has been administration change in Ethiopia. The flag has changed. Now there's blue in the Ethiopian gold, green, gold, and red, formerly red, gold, and green, and a golden star there. Um, Different changes that differ from the Solomonic dynasty regime, but the elements of His Imperial Majesty still stands, because his Imperial Majesty is the one that gave Ethiopia's formal constitution, modernized Ethiopia, and brought Ethiopia into the 20th century. Now the 21st century gave them foundation, and Ethiopia is still maintaining their independence. Italy was OIST, the Mengistu regime was OIST, and the Ethiopian Republic now is operating as its nation and doing its thing. How many are still loyal to His Imperial Majesty? Who's to know one to say? But I know the Rastafaris, we hold steadfast to the faith of His Imperial Majesty, the works of His Imperial Majesty, that goes above and beyond just the mere flesh of His Imperial Majesty, nonetheless. His vision towards not just Ethiopia, but Ethiopia as a model, and his visions to the all of Africa, a great father to Africa, advocate for the freedom, redemption of Africa. Africans should trade. Pardon me, I should have got some water. But Africans should trade amongst themselves. Africans should have critical thinking. Africa should seek not just biblical, but secular knowledge as well, so we could balance ourselves and know a greater truth and have greater understanding. Because while we want to develop and free our souls, a large part of that is, ultimately freeing our physical bodies and minds, and that requires formal education, and education needs housing, which is schools and universities for higher faculty of learning, hospitals, all these things that Ethiopia received after the war, um, of hoisting out, with the assistance of British and other personnel from around the world, hoisting Mussolini, which was hanged um, in Italy after returning for failing to holding on to their occupation, their 5-year occupation of Ethiopia, even asking husbands and wives to basically help fund the fight for Ethiopia to take over Ethiopia. And they took off their wedding bands and was putting it in this big stone cup to melt it to basically help fund um, the occupation of Ethiopia. So that was met after they lost World War II. The Nazi regime and their, Japan, Germany, Italy, and they're bet by the what is it, the NATO force, was it? Yes, that block. And yeah, he caught hell. It was hung by his own people, while Ethiopia went on for reparations being restored. So schools, universities, scientists, professors from all walks of life wanted to come into Ethiopia because everybody was amazed how this so-called backward nation of Ethiopia, isolated in the upper highlands, fought modernized, weaponized planes, tanks, Italy, and won. Tanks and plane versus man with bone and arrow, spears and swords on horseback, you know? And the fact that the king was a part of the League of Nations now, and they saw the reality of, the collective security, and it doesn't matter how big a nation is, they should still even respect a smaller nation. Everybody deserve their respect, because today it might be for me, you don't know tomorrow when it might be for you. And that's what happened with the European nations there. While they gave Mussolini the upper hand, they didn't see the right hand coming from the Nazi regime. And the result, they had to move swiftly with denouncing Mussolini before they were kind of sketchy. And, oh, let's see how it turns out. We don't know who's right and wrong. Even though Ethiopia's in their land, we don't really, who could to say Mussolini was really doing anything bad, or who to say what's what. But once they started getting help from the Nazi regime, they were quick to denounce Italy there, and came to the aid and assistance of Ethiopia, hoisting them from out of Ethiopia. And yeah, once again, EWF was set up as a result. The Shashamani there was presented. Some would even lend to be thinking Shashamani is just a Rastaman, Rastafari thing to Rastafarian people. No, it's to the diasporans, Ethiopian black people, if you will, of the Western world who desired to go home. Ethiopia there at the land grant, though Mengistu took over control of that during the 70s, going up after the coup with His Imperial Majesty. Um, that land grant was met with royal seal. So a lot of different parties were privy to that, and who still had a respect for the formal government and the Solomonic dynasty. So a king seal, an emperor seal is something that is very valuable. So Ethiopia still upheld that. And though there's been some troubles with the land, that 500 hectares has been reduced. Um, Progress within the roads building in Ethiopia had seen homes destroyed and bulldozers going through specific places of Shashamani that would basically be in the area of where a road was zoned and planned. And it's unfortunate homes are destroyed, but the Rastafaris there still hold on, and the other occupants, because there's some that non-Rastafaris there as well, but make up the minority, and they're still holding on there to that legacy and keeping Shashamani alive. So I commend those Rastafaris there, and hope they work continuously and build on that foundation that His Imperial Majesty has left for us. And that's basically the synopsis there with what the king has done for us as Rastafari, the black world in Africa there during his time. Many more details, feel free to go read it up. World War II, um, the autobiography of His Imperial Majesty, and various other books where you could get into the Ethiopian war and the whole situation, and His Imperial Majesties himself, selected speeches in terms of a lot of great things, utterance and saying by Ethiopians, divine king, and just the Ethiopian history overall. It's a wealth of knowledge. But this brings us to Rastafari and A.D.O.T.S. Once again, A.D.O.T stands for African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and subsequent slavery, the Black Holocaust. And yeah, Rastafari, who comes under that umbrella, because while Rastafari is our own nation, we are too descendants of the transatlantic slave trade predominantly, though as a spiritual culture, ones are enlightened all over the world, within Africa, Australia, the four corners of the world. People are waking up to the light and reality of Rastafari. And it's not even just black people, white, Chinese, Japanese, Indian, you name it. And that is swell. That is swell. Though, unfortunately, some of the time, in my experience, I have to say it's a lot of misnotions, and the concept of what it means to Rastafari. Um, yeah, it seems some people want to take the black narrative and the black aspects out of Rastafari, which is impossible. Rastafari is a black theological reality for black people to wake up to the truth of a black Christ, a black king, a black empress, a black Melchizedek, a black God, you know, and to basically be redeemed and find salvation to a black Christ, a black Yoshua Mashiach, and returning to a black Africa or New Jerusalem, you know, with Ethiopia or headquarters, the New Jerusalem, but all of Africa are Eden or heaven on earth. We're not just merely um, the lost tribes of Israel found, but we're also the lost tribes and children of Mother Africa who were scattered from Eden, scattered from Africa and brought to the four corners of the earth as well. So when we see His Imperial Majesty, it's listening and hearing that call for us to rally around our kings of kings, because Israel God is Israel's king. And we know that David is the ruling house of the throne of God on earth. Versus the other tribes, we know that the different tribes were divided. Some went into Europe, some went into the cold north, and not just taken over, but they were amalgamated into different pagan and different racial groups, becoming Europeans and other things. While most of the Black Hebrew Israelite preserved their blackness by going into Africa. Today, we see it as the Bantu expansion, where a lot of peoples went throughout West Africa to east to south, and you know after years, centuries, the troubles wasn't over for the Israel. We end up being, taken back to Egypt in ship. Modern day Egypt, which is basically the Western world Americas, who still host the monuments there of the obliques. They have the pyramid on their dollar. They have the eagle. All of these symbols and emblems that basically is like an exact match to Egypt, which is basically captivity. And it's basically Egypt away from Egypt. So we were taken back to Egypt as not the merely physical Egypt there in Africa, but a specific sort of way of life and way of looking at things, a specific government. And we know not ancient Egypt, but modern day Egypt was taken over by various groups: the Assyrians, Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, till eventually, the Ottoman Empire. We have, and then we have the Arabs who still occupy it till today, and even trying to question the reality of, are the ancient or were the ancient Egyptians black, which is complete nonsense in my book and reality, based off what I know. But yeah, various things in a long history. But today we have Rastafari peoples of various walks of life, which is good, but we have to be clear and specific. Black Star Movements Association, while I myself, Prophet Brian, otherwise known as Rasayam, is a Rasta man, priestical order of Melchizedek, Baba Shanti, an advocate and follower, disciple of the Honorable Prince Holy Emmanuel, the seven-eyed Donai God, seventh Lord God, Spirit of the Most High, who arisen in the Western world to bring forth truths and rights, a holistic lifestyle, and all things to remembrance, faithful priests of His Imperial Majesty, who basically took us under His wings with His teachings of ceremonial praise to the Most High, holy attire, holy thinking, holy liberty to give us sanctity and the salvation necessary, clean our souls to be worthy receivers of the Africa and the heaven temporal and the heaven eternal. So it's a full scope, and we hold to that. While not every Rastafari hold to that outlook, Baba Shanti specifically holds to that outlook. Rastafari, throughout the years, throughout its inception, has been through, from the 1930s, a lot of ups and downs. Um, as far as I could see it, during the initial rising of Rastafari consciousness, which is still growing, the olden days were, it was tough as a result of the system, the hardships, the brutality against black man, the natural black man, even till today, being seen with locks, they're seen as some sort of rebel or outcast, rebel with a cause, nonetheless, especially even in the island of Jamaica, some parts of Africa, Caribbean. You're not even allowed to have locks. You're always being attacked by the police or being considered some sort of criminal, though you're not doing anything. You stand for peace and love. They label us as such and brand us together with the marijuana, which we don't shy from, because Rasta marijuana is a staple in our culture. We use this as a sacrament to basically facilitate in the meditative state to give praise to our Most High God. And it's just a part of our tools, much like our shaker, our drum. Not every Rastafari buns weed or smoke weeds. We use other various medicines. And even when we do use the marijuana, sometimes it's for teas or different product. If you know about marijuana, it has over a trillion uses and counting. The healing of the nation, if you will. But a lot of, ostracize us as human beings to keep us out of things. We took on that out of Babylon, out of the system mentality as a result of preserving ourselves, took to the hills every time, even since the time of Leonard Holiday with the Pinnacle, that we try to rise up a sort of self sufficient sort of lifestyle and get land. Leonard Howe was put into jail many times. They burned down Pinnacle, they burned down houses, they jailed people, till it ended up at Bacawal there, now Tivoli Garden in Jamaica. You could go look up the history. Yeah, so it was a lot of fight, a lot of upheaval as the Rasta man fought for his identity, in and amongst the Jamaican people, who some of the times, a lot of the times, was not welcoming because it was the Greco-Roman westernized Christian mentality, seeing the white man, the lighter skin colorism is more superior, weaving, perming, changing your look. So to have a set of people that is holding to their roots, that are saying Africa, when a lot of black people is disconnected from Africa, don't see Africa, um, the Rastafari's met with a lot of opposition, and we were thrown into jail. We were killed. A lot of different things, but we were still here. We're still here. But I must say, the divide amongst Rastafari in these later days, that me, maybe the third generation, fourth of Rastafari, now find myself, is very disheartening. I love my culture. I love my race once again. I love King Rastafari. I love Empress Menen. I love King Emmanuel. I love the Honorable John Marcus Garvey. I love the Rastafari Holy Trinity. Yes. And to see what's is happening is not good. Rasta man passing Rasta man on the road with no hail, um, Sistrins claiming Rastafari, looking like the Western world, no hail as well. Our culture is a very rich and deep one. Even though you have some Rastafaris now going to the music arena for a livelihood and to spread the word and message of Rastafari through conscious reggae music. Rastafari, we are more than just conscious reggae music. And the true and original music of Rastafari is none other than the Nyabingi drums, which holds to a holistic African culture of beating of our drums for praise, for ceremonies and celebrations. That is our formal music. We touch into the genres of reggae, hip hop culture sort of thing as an outreach to the world to spread the message. And this is one of the things that's been taken out of context because people out there get introduced to Rasta through music, which is great, but then it only stops there. They start to praise the musicians, and some of these rap musicians, um, they like to hold that position as well and take the praise, though they're the singers and players of musical instruments. When that was referencing in the Bible, that was not a hip hop or a reggae genre. That was more spiritual music, spiritual harps, pure, sanctified, holy unto the Most High, Naya Bingi, not guitar and bass drum and digital keyboard. That's not what was the intent of we are singers and players of musical instrument. Our thing was pure, and we have to keep it pure because we know it's pure. Notwithstanding, we reach out with the reggae music, which is okay, but we're putting the horse or the cart in front of the horse in a lot of the case, and because with the fame and the fortune and the limelight, these things trying to take the glory from the core reality, strength, and identity of what it is to be a Rastafari, which is fundamentally recognizing his imperial majesty as the Father God incarnate, pardon me. Yes. And with our faith within our holy Christ 2,000 years ago or whatnot, but is a black Christ and is a Christ of salvations. That's why you'll see Rastafari, even though we're not a religion, we holistically read the scriptures and the Bible because we have faith within our Christ, not a belief per se. A faith because we know the man of God is real. We know the holy Melchizedek is real, so we live and we practice that faith, that reality, not just by words and reading scriptures, but we live a life unto God, morality and values. And we know we are the Israelites. It's not a belief, and we live that as our reality. Yeah. But difference in outlook and opinion has arisen as a result of the modern world, the music fraternity, fame and fortune, and it finds some Rastafari moving away from the tradition and the core values of what it means to be Rastafari. It's a black culture, black theology unto God, and a black outlook. So whether you're a white, Chinese, or Indian Rastafari that come and want to come under this black culture, this black spirituality, you have to know, recognize, and give way that it's a black culture. And if you don't want to understand that and want to take it as color doesn't matter and Rasta doesn't deal with color and race, you came to the wrong place. For hundreds of years, thousands, the black world has been given a white Jesus. Until this day, it's one of the biggest misconceptions affecting the psyche of black people. And you never heard nothing about, oh, color doesn't matter or nothing. And when we wake up to the truth now of a black Christ, historically through an Ethiopian context and reality and history, and a lot of things that show the reality of life, and that it's a black God, we took up our reality now of a black God, irrespectively of the slavery, the lies, the black people, you're nothing, ill dignity, look down upon us. We claim our black God from one of the, what's considered one of the poorest nations, Ethiopia, right? When you used to hear Ethiopia, it's flies and big belly propaganda, starvation you're seeing. Now we come claim Rastafari, a black king from what's considered one of the poorest nations, by one of the poorest nations, black people, in the Western world, Jamaica, and we do that. And we went through fight in Jamaica. We still go through fight, and after all of that, black people, we fight for our rights in Americas and whatnot. And now some hippies or some ones here, a little one love, one heart, become sympathetic versus empathetic, and then now want to take it on as a fad or a little, you know, exotic thing that they like, smoke a little weed, come to Jamaica, tourism feel all right, hang out maybe with a little rent to dread or somewhat, and all of a sudden they think they're Rasta with no knowledge of the black experience, no knowledge of Marcus Garvey and what he stands for, no knowledge of his imperial majesty, and with his rally cry for Africa unites, trade amongst our own selves, so only the Africans could basically, fix our own problems. We can't look to foreigners. And they omit these realities from their experience of Rastafari and want to shape it into everybody sort of thing in their context. No, it's a everybody thing in a black context, right? And where did we see this happen before throughout history? A whole lot of time and a whole lot of things. Ancient Egypt, where now it's a question of, did the black people really build the pyramids? The black Christ of 2,000 years ago, white Jesus, we see it in the churches and all these things because the Greco Roman power structure, Christendom, Catholicism took control. We know that the Romans crucified Christ, and all of a sudden now it's the Romans that's spreading the word of Christ. How convenient. The Roman Empire has turned into the Holy Roman Empire, and instead of a Caesar, it's a Pope Czar, the Vicar of Christ. Huh? The papal bull that orchestrated and authorized the slavery by the Italians, the Spaniards, and the Portuguese, and deemed that enslaving and capturing black people wasn't a sin, but a moral responsibility to basically convert the heathens and the pagans over to Christianity, right? And that is a history you could go look up again. But we, intelligent and anointed and blessed by the Most High, light has come to the world. The Son is given, the Son is born, His imperial majesty is arisen. Prophet, priests, and kings have seen the light and risen up within truth of their soul towards a black Christ. And now the small rock that the stone has refused by Jamaican black people, the Caribbean, the world, we say Rastafari. We make a look of music, we're hated. We grow our locks, we're hated. And now you have other nations see us, see value in us, and now they come, which is okay. But now they want to come and what? Influence and change the narrative of this black theology and culture. Fire burn. And shame on those Rastafari who give way as a result of licky belly, hungry for money, and sell out the culture. Some of them are not even Rastafaris to begin with because they don't hold to the tenets and the values of what it means to be Rastafari. Rent a dread, just like you could go to the Caribbean and buy the little Tom with the little fox locks coming out of the back, you know? It's like it's a little David Crockett Rasta hat sort of a thing, or a weave. You just put it on, bald head, Rasta, bald head, Rasta. Oh, I bought a ganja spliff. Hey, I'm a Rasta. Hmm? Without no respect of our culture. And why is that? It's not completely them to blame, but we who hold on to what is Rastafari, even some of the elders, what are we communicating? What are we presenting? How are we educating? We know that we're not rich while we're very wealthy because Jamaican subculture of dancehall reggae is a makeshift culture that comes outside of basically trying to survive. Rastafari is more than that. We have our African drums from Queen Nyabingi that turned Nyabingi chanting down pressers, right? We have our royal turban. If you go to Ethiopia, you'll see a royal turban. If you read scriptures, the Essenes, and the royal priesthood of, the Aaronites and various different ones. This turban we're in culture. Yes, and you have our robes as well that is authentically Ethiopian African coming from scripture Hebrew Israelite as well. So Rastafari culture, though we stand up for freedom, rights, liberation and all these things, it's not a subculture because you have culture and then you have subculture, which is something that came out of another thing. Culture comes out of the land, the life, and how you live within a positive aspects. Subcultures come out of hostility and striving to survive. You have hip hop of the Americas. That is a subculture. Mm? That's why it's easy to become degenerate. Though there are hip hop songs, don't let push me to the edge or else I'm going to lose my edge. Yes, songs that spoke to the struggle of what we were facing as black people in the Western world. That was not a culture that came out of a desperate plea and need to survive. And while it's good, that is something that has arisen when we're not in our right state of mind. So that lends to be in a subculture. We're not sober, we're just desperate. But Rastafari has come out of a conscious mind. It uses things that's before slavery, such as the drums, our attire, our theology, and our outlook, which is a River Nile culture, and that's why it even differs. Even within Jamaica, from the Jamaican subculture, you see dominoes as a part of Jamaican culture. Dominoes is a pirate game that the pirates used to play on the pirate ship. It's just like bones and throwing bones. Hmm? Um, Dancehall music and these things. It's not really that positive. While it helps with some people's livelihood, the content and the lyrics of many and most of the dancehall music is one of slackness, broke out, relationship, and it differs from conscious reggae music that Rastafari is known for, even though we've received some backlash once again from even the conscious reggae because the fame, you know, and the money corrupted once. You have a lot of artists now that have the money and never went to Africa and have no desire to go to Africa. They're living in the UK, they're living in the Americas, and give you, they have the bag of money, when you look at some of them even tour Africa go on big tours and carry up African money to bring right back to the Western world, right back to the UK, right back to the Americas to live. You know, big up Miss Rita Marley there for at least even relocating to Ghana, which is a great thing. I know the Marley family kind of left out of the Rastafarian culture and became formal Ethiopian Orthodox since the time of Bob Marley's passing. And it is what it is, but they're still black people. They're still descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. But we as Rastafaris who still hold steadfast to the faith of His Imperial Majesty and black love Africa and the need for us to unite. And while Rastafari, we're putting in our work specifically as Rastafari. We know that it's the whole black family, the whole redemption of all of Africa. Until all of Africa free, none of us is going to be free, right? So all real and all conscious Rastafaris, we need to stand up. Once again, it's disheartening to see the divide amongst Rasta. Where I don't really see a strong presence of Rastafari out there in the world, in the media, in the digital world, the internet, and these things. I'm just see the need in pushing myself here, even though once again it's for the holistic conscious black Africans and African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade that the Black Star Movement Association stands for. But Rastafari comes under that, and me, Rasayam, who's presenting that prophet buy-in, I am a Rastafari. So there's always going to be a Rastafari element. 'Cause Rastafari is basically a pinnacle, a pillar, and a fortress of strength, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding when it comes to the freedom, redemption, and liberation of Africa. And that's why we need to be in Africa, repatriate to Africa, along with our brothers and sisters, the pro blacks. Pan African Black extended family, all of us, once again, the A.D.O.T.S, African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, and specifically conscious black African. I can't leave out those words. Conscious black African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. And there's a reason for the specific, detailed mentioning of these words. Because while you have some African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, it's not a lot of them identify with that. And there's a lot that don't even identify with the need and the desire to go to Africa. So there is a divide while you have some Rastafaris just as well. It's funny, but some don't want to go to Africa for one reason or another. They don't want to put in the work, they don't want to fight. Some is because of a lack of financing, and some is because Jamaica. Yeah, Jamaica's Africa, or some sort of weird ideology that they have made up in their mind, a bit of a delusion, if you ask me. um yeah, it's like pretty much insane because of a lack of activity, a lack of progress. One's basically start envisioning something that doesn't really make sense, and it goes against the Rastafari narrative, which is black God, black Christ, black Africa, back to Africa, salvation and redemption. And that's in a nutshell. I could go into detail, but that is a nutshell of what it means to be Rastafari with love, peace, love, and understanding. Yes, that's what it is. So, for those of us African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, once again, conscious black African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, because say we get reparations, some might decide they want to stay in the diaspora of the Western world. That is okay if that's their choice. It's not a forced thing. So for us, we have to be put in the work for ourselves to carve out our identity as conscious Black African descendants. Conscious means that we desire to return to Africa to Senkufa, right? And we have to work together because Rastafaris, we're Pan African. Rastafari, we're pro Black. Notwithstanding, I said there's some white Chinese and different type of Rastafarians. Rastafarian is holistically pro-black. Don't let some Nazis fool you within their take and how they go about life to appease those that are in power or who those are, more accepted into society. And the return for Africa, it is a black man redemption, not a white Rasta redemption, not a Chinese Rasta redemption, because the Chinese Rasta has China to go to, the Japanese Rasta has Japan to go to, the Indian Rasta has India to go to. So the black Rastafari needs and wants Africa to go to, right? So when you look, you'll have Rastas all over the world. A lot of the time, in cases, you have different nations coming into Rasta, and it's like they want to take on the role of the black man, basically usurp and hijack what it is to be a Rasta and redefine it, right? And try to sell you on the king is not about color and race or none of those things, and try to tell you that until the color of a man's skin hmm, is no significant, and taking his imperial majesty is plea for justice for black people and take it, because we were the so-called underdogs, the underlions. So when the spoke those words, it was in defense of black people who were being trampled by the foreign nations, not something to be used now as a weapon against the same people who haven't received any justice, who haven't received any reparations, and try to tell them that, oh, the little culture that you took over, you have, I want that too. I want to be the Rasta. Hmm? I want to be the image of Rasta on the almanac, just like how they took Joshua, the little poor man from Bethlehem down at Galilee there, that they crucified, and all of a sudden now it's everywhere in the big churches and the big cathedrals. Yeah, mainstream Jesus kind of thing. But before it was a poor man and a donkey that nobody loved. Little poor man from down from Bethlehem or whatnot, born in the manger and all sorts of things. So it's the same thing we see now with the little poor Rasta man, barefoot, whatever locks. You drop your comb, natty, 40 leg in your head, and all of a sudden now everybody wants a piece of the Rasta man's culture. Huh? Them a move like Rasta. Diggy dick dick dick. Them a move like Rasta. Yeah? Wanna use our name for cliche things, especially our Jamaican brothers and sisters that don't really have a respect or a manners for Rasta. The audacity with all of the things we have done for Jamaican people, right? And some of the least amount of respect for Rastafaris from the Jamaican people, who in a lot of the cases don't even understand or take the time to understand who and what a Rastafari really is and what we represent. And even if you do that and you differ, we have the right, human right, to exist and be about a way like anybody else. If you don't choose to come the Rasta way, do your thing, do your thing, but don't mock and jeer us. Don't yeah, as much as the white man did to the black peoples is what the Rasta face amongst their own black people. And lo and behold, even in Africa you'll experience this as well, because the same religion is there, the same white supremacy Christianity, Greco-Roman Christianity, that sees black as not good enough, inferiority complex, Holy Ghost fire, and all these things are there, and they look down on you if you have your locks, brand you as a criminal, right? You have to prove yourself, and whatever you come with still ain't gonna be good enough, right? We go home to Africa to live amongst our brothers and sisters in peace, respect the respective cultures and whatnot. But we need for them to recognize that we ourselves have our own culture coming in as Rastafari. Yeah, maybe not all of us as the African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, because some of us didn't really develop a culture, and coming in naked and want to subscribe to some of the pre-existing African tribes and culture, which is free as well, because people are finding back their roots. We Rastafari has found back our root of David to Queen Asheba and King Solomon, Haile Selassie, and so forth. And that is our culture that we practice in and outside of Africa. So when we reach Africa, we're holding to those roots with respect and love to our tribal brothers and sisters within Africa. And yeah, but we need representation. What I experienced within Africa, you have every tribe and they have their designated land, ancestral land, as Black Africans. I see we as the diaspora and going in. You hear even with Ghana there, the year of return, and one's return, and what? You return to no land. You return to you have to lease to get land. Oh, land in Osebu for those who have returned, which is a project between some, I think it's a synergy between some in the Americas and those chiefs in Africa, there in Ghana specifically. And yeah, we're gonna have this land that's a chief land. You could get a documentation for lease on that land. You could build your house, but you have to start breaking ground and doing things and at least complete it within a 2 year span. Each individual could get a plot of these land, which for some is okay, but for me it wasn't my taste. Bring 2 bottles of Hennessy and whatnot. The African tradition of bringing some sort of gift and undisclosed amount of money. That wasn't for my taste at all. These same gifts, given, receiving sort of culture, tradition is how slavery happened. Bring us some musket gun, bring us some whiskey, and as a result, we give you some black people to go bring over into slavery and do what you will with them. So that wasn't really my taste. And in addition to that, um, there was some chiefs saying they recognized it wouldn't make sense. Even the Ghanaians government there, the Kofi Ado, Kofi Annan Ado there, still incumbent, but with coming elections, we're gonna see what happens there. But the year of return, we give thanks for the recognition and some sort of talk of year of return. It gave a lot of people the opportunity to at least even make the pilgrimage to Africa, see it for themselves, see what's going on, and then go from there. But a lot was missing, a whole lot in the terms of proper representation and the facilitating of something for a long-term return and stay within Africa. Number one on the list is land. I have friends that are there currently. My experience there, and in a lot of the cases, it's ridiculous. The status is nothing uniquely gearing to us as descendants of the African slave trade in terms of status. You have to go through the long, expensive, costly channel of trying to get status in the nation, down to even a mere phone, to register to have a phone, where you have to have specific documentation before you could do that. And it's timely. Maybe you go there for a month, 2 months. There's things in place now where you could use your passport and try to do that. But if you go to a place you're not used to it, then you have to do all these running up and down. It's very uncomfortable. But even for the longer time period of residing in the country, if you say you want to return to your homeland, buy a house, rent. Maybe that's good for the African or the Ghanaian economy. But we need more than that as African descendants of the slave trade. We are considered long lost brothers and sisters that are returning. And I don't just put this on the backs of Ghanaians. I put this at the table on the backs of all African nations, especially West African nations and those who have a large history, extensive on trading slaves. So that's Nigeria, Senegal, Cameroon, you name it. All of the West African nations, Sierra Leone that have their castles, their Canary Islands, you name it. What have you done for the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade? Huh? It is not a good look to return to your former continent that you were originally before you were forcibly taken or sold by even some of your black brothers. And it's a insult to injury where you just want to be used as something for tourism. You are black. You should visit. Come home. Book a hotel. Stay for a while. Invest in a little thing. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that totally, but where is something more symbolic and meaningful for our needs and also for the ancestors that died, didn't make it, died at the bottom of the sea, the ones who did make it, enslaved and die on the plantation, and for us now, the posterity that still exists here, catching hell from in the Western world, degradation, ostracization, abuse, hardship, lack of identity, inferiority complex, a whole host of things, being jailed unjustifiably, injustice. We want to go home to Africa. We haven't received reparation yet from the European powers. We want reparations from our African brothers and sisters as well. We'd like to ask for that. We know that Africa monetarily caught their hell as well through colonizations. So the reparations that we desire from Africa is not a monetarily recompensation as how we would like, in addition to other things from the European powers. It's a reparation because reparation means to repair. Um, we want land, restoration of land. We're not talking about a land that is, you're going to build your own country sort of thing, your own state, and cut that out of an existing sovereign nation. No, we're talking about a territory, a settlement, then, if you will, formal settlement that becomes ancestral settlement, so we could get back and take back our rightful space as one of the mosaic tribes of Africa. The African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. Once again, the conscious Black African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade tribe settlement, a place that we know belongs to us indefinitely, and this could be from African state to African state, or maybe carved out a singular state of how much, let's say, kilometers square. We could know that is a protectorated land agreed on by various African nations. But something we could call for ourselves, like we could take pride in, we could look to, we could come and reside, give us the necessary space so we're not stepping on each other's toe. We know Africa consists of various tribes. We are one of those tribes. We were taken from our land. We were robbed of who we are, our culture, and everything. We have become conscious now to know our history, not just West African, South African history, but ancient African history. And knowing more anciently our history makes us whole. We know tribalism has divided Africa and it played a large part in the selling of Africans by Africans to the European powers that made them rise up now to be a superpower and basically have Africa down through neocolonialism and imperialism. So that was the fault of our people as Black people, thinking they were better than the next Black, didn't take us into regard and basically selling. And just like with the League of Nations, today for us, tomorrow for you, because they thought the white man and the Europeans, they were just going to be working with those that were sold as slaves, right? But then after they came to Africa and wanted all of Africa, we know their, King Leopold and all that, and the Berlin Conference when they carved up Africa for themselves, right? So that was the turn black blow. That was the judgment from the universe and the Most High on all Black people for doing such a nefarious act of selling their own people. So we dropped the ball. We sold out ourselves. And it doesn't mean that the European powers don't have their judgment to pay as well. But ones have to take accountability for their role and their part. And apologizing, just like with the European powers, while apologizing is okay and all that, it's not good enough. We want something tangible, something that affects our lives. And what we lost in the slave trade, outside of just life, is the means to life, which is land. Land to grow our children, land to grow our crops, land to feel safe, someplace to call your own, right? We need that. When we come to Africa, um, we see, I know friends in Africa, they always talking about their tribe. You'll be there hanging with them, then there's some sort of meeting, they gone to meet with their tribe. They gone up to Volta region there to meet with their Awa brothers and sisters. Shanti man, I know he'll be there. Then all of a sudden, he's going to meet with his Ashanti brothers and sisters there in the Ashanti kingdom. You know, and when they do that, you feel left out because where is your kingdom? Where is your land? Where is your tribe? Though some of us might make it to Africa, it's scattered. A little meetings here and there, a little get together. When you look, this man's all the way over here, this man's all the way over there, this woman's all the way over there, and that's within one country. And in addition to that, you have this man in this state, he's in West Africa. Your other friend, he's in South Africa. The other one is all the way over there in East Africa, which is okay because all of Africa needs to feel our presence. But we need something more substantial in addition to that, that is representative of our identity. Because a lot of Africans might see us and still don't know who we are. You're met with the "Who are you?" and "What are you doing here?" So our black brothers and sisters on the continent needs to be more educated on who we are, and to just do a sideways and byways education or just do the music there on the airwaves doesn't do us any justice, and that holds back the progress of Africa. You know, um, I'm for and subscribe and present a settlement initiative for reparations. This gives our African brothers and sisters a formal way that they could express their love in terms of repenting for the injustices and crimes that they did against their own other black brothers and sisters, and making us an honorary part of Africa by giving us or granting us then the same way His Imperial Majesty, the only African leader that has done that, to my knowledge, with the Shashamani land grant, and provide kilometers square, acreages, hectares of land that you could designate, because Africa is vast. Land upon land. So this is not something that is impossible, or I see it as something that I'm asking that is too much, especially when with this complexion, it means you're a black African. And I know it's not all of black people in the world that's going to desire to come to Africa. Some are comfortable in the West, some are no good in the West and shouldn't even be in Africa in the first place because Africa has enough struggles as it is. So we want positive aspects into Africa to develop. Man of consciousness, righteousness, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, skills, and trade. And man and woman have vision with a love for Africa as a whole, to be one Africa, hence Pan African, which means all of Africa, pro Black, which is predominantly the original peoples of Africa, though we might see some Arabs in the north, indentured Indians and whatnot coming across. And later day now, the Chinese are looking to come in as a result of the resources that Africa hold. People are coming looking for opportunity, and they're true even money and whatnot is getting the land. So how much more we who are black people, we Rastafari who sing and cry for Africa and help to put Africa on the map in the modern times, within a positive light. Africans unite in various things with black pride and black dignity. We want to bring that black pride and dignity and centralize that in Africa, whether each state, add into what His Imperial Majesty, our Royal Black God King, has done, where each state who wants to participate could provide us with ancestral land for the conscious black diasporans, or even if it's a singular um, settlement, you know, where we have something more larger to encompass, where once they're going from state to state, just like anybody else, but they know when it comes to Africa, there's a specific state that represents them, that they could subscribe to, put their focus in, and develop, right? Because, well, we're all about the development of all of Africa. We have to start from somewhere. And a lot of the time, the notion of developed Africa and whatnot, you'll see people, black people, they look outside of themselves when they talk about development of Africa. Like, are you not black? Are you not African? So the development of Africa starts with myself, with I and I, with you. Hmm? When I'm okay, I'm gonna spread for Africa to be okay. When I have my land, when I have my house, when I have my clothes, my food, my shelter, that's something I'm advocating for all of Africa. But if we don't have it for ourselves, it's kind of backwards or nonsensical to be putting all our energy outside of ourselves to advocate for something that we ourselves don't have. So, a land settlement would be something that's great to start this new relationship in the right and the formal way. We've been going to Africa, various back and forth travels, building to the tourism network, works have been going on. In some of the cases, the Rastas built schools in Shashamani and other places. There's Rastas in Uganda. There's conscious Black Africans in Ethiopia, Uganda, all over Africa. You know, but the numbers is not there compared to existing African tribes that ranges from the hundreds of millions to the tens of millions. We are a small representation of Black people, which is okay because what we stand for is larger and greater than the physicality of our numbers. So it'll be fair. Put some of the long-standing issues to rest. The ancestors could find peace because to know that the posterity of themselves has finally returned to Africa and make whole to become one with the land of Africa. Leasing the land, you have not become one. Buying a house, you have not become one. Until you get your ancestral land, plant on that land, eat off its fruits, put your hand in the soil, feel that sun, have children, and knowing that this land is permanently yours to defend and have rights and claim to, that nobody could come and say, get off my land or anything like that, or your lease is up. What's going to happen to us when people pass in? What's going to happen when people die? A lot of the people going to Africa are elders, right? Some ain't even going. Unfortunately, even within Rastas, a lot pass away in the Western world only to sing and dream and never to even visit Africa. Some make it to Africa. In my experience, give thanks for my age of where I'm at, and time is clicking. A lot who make it there, as far as I see, is mostly elder people, women that are past the age of their reproductive years. So when they go to Africa, guess what? It's retirement. They're not having any children. So there's no next generation of African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade in Africa, right? Some of the men them there too are of that age. If they happen to have children, guess what? By the time their children reach all young adulthood, all 18, they've passed, right? The lease say 50 years you pass. What's going to be left to your children? And the person leasing you the land have rights to that lease where they could decline even renewing you your property. Whether you had built a house, a business, or whatnot on it, develop that land, that belongs to the person that leased you that land now. Picture you were leasing a car and you're souping up that car. The latest rims, stereo system and all of that, only the bank come back and repossess that car later on when the lease is up or whatnot, and not even granting you the right to lease to own. After that, that's all your money and your investment wasted there, investing in something that ultimately is not even going to belong to you. We want a settlement so that way when we build a house, it's a generational house. If the house could get renovated and continue and represents a legacy of when old man Ross I am repatriated to Africa and set up this foundation for the Ras I am family. And here we are now 100 years later, still living on that land, still, living off that farm area that he did when he first was a pioneer and came to that land. All those things are lent into our history, right? Yeah, because we want to continue the legacy of being descendants of the transatlantic slave trade when they reach Africa. We don't want that to fade away. That is a grand history that we're proud of. within the African history. The same with Africa with the colonization era. That is something that is written into the books and records of what we've been through and basically come out of triumphantly. So that's not something, even though we want to erase, even though there's a negative aspects of it, how it affect our life, how many lives were lost. It is what it is. History is not a matter of good, bad, right, wrong, life, death. It's a matter of something, an occurrence, an event took place, and events take place, and it's just making a record of that, times of love and times of war. So unfortunately, it's been a lot of war, civil unrest, lives lost. We can't forget for those who lost their lives, for the children that remain, so that way they never forget, so they could always be aware and conscious to prevent those things from happening in the future, right? So we want that land. Um, Diasporans, we go there, Pan African, Pan African. Um, you marry a local African brother or sister. You end up get absorbed into the Ashanti, absorbed into the Igbo. Hmm? Get absorbed into the African pre-existing tribes, which is okay if that's what you want, right? We want to have the free option of those who become conscious black Africans could get absorbed into the conscious black African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade tribe, because we represent something as well, which is what? Pan African, black love, black nationalism, right? Black Christ and black God, a theology, a spirituality, a cult that is all about blackness and Africa. And that is an option that black Africa needs. Not just Islam, not just Christianity, not just traditional tribalism, but something more, something original, something black African, and something ancient without so much of the influences from the foreign nation. And that's what we represent as Rastafari. That's what we represent as conscious black Africans of the transatlantic slave trade. And that's what we want to bring to Africa. That's what we want to communicate, share, and live an exemplary life to Africa. African development is not going to be in one day or overnight, because something so grand and on a macro scale. A settlement now, we could take it on a micro scale, because it's something that we could more manage and deal with, because it's easier to deal with, because it's smaller. Instead of all of Africa having housing for everybody, it's easier for us as diasporan to develop houses catering to um, the conscious black diaspora within our settlement. Running water, clean water, electricity free or whatnot. Everybody has electricity and light and all of these things, and start developing our own holistic products and services within Africa. These are the same things Africa needs. It's the same thing as Imperial Majesty did with Ethiopia, and use Ethiopia as an example on a micro level, because he's crowned as king in Ethiopia, so he has power to make changes there to develop Africa into a self sufficient, self reliant nation, right? And that's still progressing today, as you see Africa building up their great dam there to be able to provide power for themselves, and then over to even neighboring countries such as Kenya and whatnot, right? We want to be able to do that as well, because having a settlement is a foundation setting that we could plant our deeper roots into Africa, that we could help ourselves and ultimately help our African brothers and sisters, whether it's by example or sharing our skills or experience and our know-how to the greater African community and the Pan-African mosaic of tribes. Currently, how the situation is, it's not nice. We are divided. There is no connective security, right? If you don't have your finances and management in Africa, you're going to have a tough time, because Africa, you see people there, there's a lack of jobs, mismanagement, whatnot. Africa's not self-reliant. It's relying on foreign aid. It's relying on foreign loans, right? So we don't want to add to that headache of being needy and want, especially from foreign nations and these things. We want to be able to help ourselves, right? So we need a good start and a leg up. You go there and you lease. Lease is not good enough. You end up pass away. Where are you going to be buried? Is there a descendants of the transatlantic slave trade burial ground where you know that your body is just, they're not just going to burn it and scatter your ashes, leaving no evidence of you of ever existed? Hmm? Within one generation, ones who made it to Africa could disappear like they never even existed there. What is continuing our legacy? What is our continuity? Once again, elders go in there, reaching retirement age, grade haired up, not so physically fit, feeling nice, good they reach to Africa. I commend them. But on the bigger scale, what are they thinking about? You have no children in Africa. Some of their children abroad don't even desire to come to Africa. So once you're gone, kumbaya, you feel nice. What's the legacy of leaving Africa? Somebody else come take over your house. Your lease is not renewed for your property. It's like you don't exist. A lot of elders are dropping. A lot of elders are dropping. There's not a whole bunch of youths. We want to be able to populate our settlement. Pardon me there. We want to be able to populate and build our tribe of African descendants, right? So we have a culture that is formidable, respectable, right? So we could have a greater impact on Africa, positive impact. Yes, because we stand for one black love, one black Africa, one God, one aim, one destiny with respect, not force, not anything, right? So we share that love, but we want to be able to set a foundation where we could take root and manifest that love with ourselves, right? So then we could work more efficiently. What is a tradesman without his tools? What is a doctor without his stethoscope? Hmm? Where's a carpenter man without his hammer? A mason man without his shovel and all these things, to lay bricks. We need our tools. When it comes to the conscious movement, a land is a major tool in terms of providing for our needs, our food, clothes, and shelter, and preserving our culture. And a mere lease land is not going to do that. And guess what? Lease land will always be available, meaning we have our settlement. If we ever decided we want to take on ventures and require more land, we could lease just like any foreign national or anybody else or any native in lease, right? But for every local African, they have a tribe with their respective land that, because of their duration on that land and the time that they occupied it, that land belongs to them and they have some right over that land where they could lease it to others. But at the end, it belongs to their tribe and their family. We want that right too. We want to be able to lease some African descendants of Africa ancestral land if we like, and knowing that no matter what, that land will always belong to the descendants of Africa, right? And we're not a lot. We're not a lot of people. We're not a lot. We have to have room for population growth and these things, but the population density of a couple 100,000, even a million people. That's not taking up a whole lot of land. You could even use an island, or even Gambia there, for example. It's roughly the size of Jamaica. I forgot how much kilometers square. And yeah, it's only a certain amount of millions, I believe, of people. Um, you don't need a whole bunch of land to house a couple million people, much less a couple 100,000 people. You know, um, 1,000 acres square could house millions of people just within 100,000 million kilometers square, much less 500 million kilometers square, 200 kilometers square, 100 kilometers square. Hmm? That'll be sufficient. And if we're talking state to state, we don't even need that much, right? But we need something tangible, physical, where we could say, yes, this is for us, that we have rights to. We're protected by the government. It's in place that no matter if the government switches within a democratic society, that is something that is permanent. The other government that comes in, the other party can say, all right, we're going to revoke that with the new regime. Nope, it's something that is permanent, something ultimately backed by the AU. That's another thing I forgot to mention. His Imperial Majesty, one of the original founders of the Organization of African Unity, right? Spoke out against apartheid in South Africa there and various things, Angola, and the various things that are happening against Black people. And as a result of the Organization of African Unity, formulated by himself, Kwame Nkrumah, and some others, and the African Union was formed. Some would lend to say that it's a kind of organization that is not really bearing any fruit, but the fact that they took the initiative towards a unity is a great step. The fact that they have some sort of dialogue in between African nations is a great step because we have to start from somewhere. And as long as that is going on, that could be supplemented with additional means of power where they can be more effective and instrumental in Africa's unification, economical trade relations, reducing some of these borders to stimulate trade within Africa and just make Africa work as a collective body, as a Black African continent, and make it greater again. And we, as the African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, want to be a part of that. We need to be a part of that. We represent that. Our whole culture and way of life is about that. That is our purpose. That is what Black Star Movement advocates and stands for. And it all leads up to the redemption of Black Africa, right? Been here a while now, you know. I'm checking it out. I see one here. Big up yourself, whoever that is, um, in the live here. Congratulations on the work you're doing. Blessings, brother. Keep going forward. Okay, give thanks. Yeah, all the time. We definitely have to keep going forward because there's nothing else to do. Where we currently stand, it for some it's okay, but it's not good enough. We are not there yet until we're redeemed and free, back into our right state of mind and thinking. We have to keep working forward. Life is always about progress, so we have to keep progressing, and many steps and attempts and endeavors have been made. I have to make my contribution, Prophet Brian, as a Rasta man, as a Pan African, Black nationalist, pro Black, descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, conscious Black African. And this is what I'm doing here. This is my life work. This is my purpose, and conscious Black Africans unite. Yeah, man. Reparations for conscious Black descendants of the transatlantic slave trade. While we stand for reparations from the colonial powers for the Black Holocaust, we're asking our brothers and sisters who might more have a heart of justice in this time more than the Europeans, because we'll never stop whether we're in Africa, whether it's 10 years or 100 years from now, the need for reparation is a must because it's not just a monetary getting from the Europeans or asking for free money. It is a remedy. We see what they did to Bill Cosby. We see what they did to R. Kelly, whether good or bad or whatnot. The whole fact of the precedence of going back years into an incident that has happened and granted claims against a particular person or party where that person is jailed and have to pay up money for whatever wrongs that might have happened or happened, right? You know? And we are here, slavery occurred. We're still getting abused and killed to this day. Ku Klux Klan is something that still exists within America. White supremacy still exists in the world. Extreme bigotry and hatred still exist in the world. Neocolonization still exists in the world. But yet, if we rise up and we speak on or about the need for reparations, it's being met with for what? Huh? You weren't slaves, you weren't enslaved. Hey, we're catching problems now. And once again, a lot of our problems is stemming from what happened in the past because you put us on a handicap reality, right? You maimed our minds, everything. You abused and have us in a particular way of thinking, right? So you could continue to take advantage of us. You trained us into being passive and submissive, not standing up for the rights of our justice. And as soon as we'll lift our mouth to say we want or deserve better, nope, you want to slap it to the slide. So that in itself is racism and a slavery mindset. What else you need? You did a wrong, which you boast about with slavery movies. You catch a racist on the road, you're quick to say nigger. Nigger is not something that came up just yesterday. That's part of the white man's legacy and how they treated black people. And it's still a derogatory, inflammatory word that is used to slander black people till this day, right? You made us so backwards now where every two-bit Negro is going around saying nigga, nigga, and white, Chinese, and Indian hibbity hobby and feel like they have the right to say it too because they bought a NWO album. They listened to Tupac and they bought some things so they could you know use these kind of derogatory words, unfortunately, that black people use to identify with, and they want a part of that. Just like I was saying with the Rastafari, they considered us nothing, and now you have non-blacks coming in and they want to usurp off what Rastafari is and mean. It's the same way they want to down to even black people calling themselves nigger, and non-black people want a piece of that. I want to be able to say nigger too. What up, my nigger? I didn't mean racist. I mean it in a let's be friends kind of thing. I mean my friend, my buddy that is coming and has a history of slavery and derogatory. How dare you want to come and even say that word? Even if some uneducated, ignorant Negroes want to call themselves that and identify with that, that still doesn't give you the right. That's their ignorance. Leave them alone with it. Nope, I want a part of that. I want to be able to say nigga too, right? And that's the problem we have in here with the whole integration and mixing, because you're not allowed to be black, you're not allowed to have a culture. When you do create a little subculture kind of slang thing, because we're so talented and we're so attractive, the said people that hate and stop us from even having something of substance or culture, they didn't even want part of our subculture as well. So, could the black man have nothing? Can the black man have something? Right? So that's why when we go to Africa, we need our land because we need something, right? We need to be a people. We need to be a people. So yeah, that's the bottom line, and that's what we have to come to realize. While we might be black, that is a fundamental of just like you look black, but a people requires more. You're identifying with a thinking, a psyche, a way of life. You're identifying with food, outlook, you know, one cause, one God, one aim, one destiny. That is what it means to be a people. Because nationhood and security stems from that. You have a family. Why? Because a family makes you secure. If you're sick, you could count on your wife and your children there when you're a worker and you're in your older age. You have a tribe. Your tribe's to helps to defend against if you're being invaded by other tribes or foreigners, right? You have a nation. You have your army, your government there, and their first rule of thumb is to basically to protect you as a nation, to protect your interest there and your existence. So that's what we need to do. We need to be a people. Yeah, and some find it hard because what? Downtrodden, we tried it before, man, backstab, slave me, um, sold me out. I tried with these friends, but they sold me out. They didn't do and followed me. So now I'll never try to unite or have collectivism again. Hmm? It's a sort of give up mentality. A right is a right and a need, irrespective of if people do the right or follow, you know, or see the need. Truth is a truth. Whether you follow the truth, accept the truth, practice the truth still exists. And it's just still a matter of time before it affects your life where you're going to have to wake up to say, man, you know what? I shouldn't have fought against truth, reality. Um, yeah, that thing, I should have just surrendered to that. It's something that requires submission, fundamental truths, and reality. No man is an island, even though we're forced to be. But guess what? The vision and the mission is for black love and unity, because only that could redeem us and set us free. One man, one nation alone. West Africa's there under the defense of Africa. Guess what? The other East Africa or whatnot is making foreigners come up from that flank to invade. North Africa is defending Africa. When you look, invasion is starting from the south. So you need all hands on deck covering the north, south, east, west, and central, right? So individual existence is just survival, even within the animal kingdom. Lions have pride. Dogs, coyotes, wolves, and foxes have their packs. You know, the cows, reindeers, they have their herds. Fishes have their schools. You know, the insects have their swarms. And all these things come together, these creatures, even trees and flowers congregate together. Why? Because they're of the same species. Yeah, right? They like the same habitat, they like the same environment. It increases their chance of survival. They have survival mechanisms that work together, where alone it might die, but together it stands. In the forest, the trees create a whole ecosystem based off of the canopy in, say, the South American rainforest, where underneath it's very hot and moist, and that is good for the trees of the South African rainforest and maintains moisture throughout. So there's no drought. That wouldn't happen with just one tree. All the trees come together to facilitate that environment, just like how they come together and create, like they'll say, the lungs of the earth by emitting out the oxygen, yeah, as trees. So togetherness, nationhood, and people is a power, and black people has lost that power throughout the transatlantic slave trade and even before, but in these later days, even more. And the reality of what it means and to basically be a people where even people of smaller numbers could come in and wreak havoc on the black nation because they're thinking and living so divisive and divisible within themselves, and so treacherous amongst themselves. It's like open season on the black world because of that selfish individual mind state. So there is no security. You're living by grace. You're living by just the power of the Most High or your own faith within you, which is okay. But that tends to just put ones in a survival mode, right? At any time, minute, or hour, you don't know when problems could happen. Problems where if you had collective security, you would have had maybe either somebody talking on your behalf, somebody fending off the east, west, north, or south flank, um yeah, working together to resolve an issue versus you there as a sole individual. When you're the sole individual, you're walking and treading on a very thin line, very thin ice, especially even within Africa there, where you're amongst various tribes, millions of people, right? We love our black brothers and sisters, but what? We need more representation. We need more settlement. We, as the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, need more collective security. We need some place we could have our own and have a start. And I know that our brothers and sisters in Africa love that, to know that, hey, man, up the road to that region there, that's where the African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade reside. And within that, they have Pan Africans, pro blacks, Rastafari, all those lost sons and daughters from Africas are there congregated in one place. You go to another state in Africa, you have one there too, right? And we become honorary members and tribes of Africa, healing, right? And bonding that rupture that was created as a result of the African slave trade. Now we become one Africa again. The lost Africans find back their rightful place, and we could really be at home and feel like we're one with our African brothers and sisters because the land make us one. While we might be different tribes, our race, our color makes us one, and the land makes us one. One black Africa. Give thanks for the royal moment, black brothers and sisters. Been talking for a while now. See, a few more people has come on the live. Big up everybody. I don't know if you're just coming in. Yeah, been a nice little discussion here, a lecture to the people. Them just letting them know, nation building is required. Nation building stands with land, you know, people coming together, like-minded, you know, and just giving thanks to His Imperial Majesty coronation just yesterday, number third, commemorating for November 2nd, 1930, where Christ as King was crowned in Ethiopia. There, light to the world that wake up people like myself, different generation, but even initially with other generations around that time in the island of Jamaica that recognize and see the light coming out of Ethiopia and knowing that it wasn't any ordinary light. Africa's full of kings, but the crowning of Haile Selassie wasn't just any ordinary crowning or ordinary king. Very instrumental, very significant. And if you study the history and what transpired, if you know, you'll know, right? If you know, you'll know. But give thanks for the royal moment. Just stay strong, stay firm. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so anytime I'm making a live or posting anything, you'll be in the loop. Yeah, look out for, you know, Africans Unite program installation of when I'm in Africa and putting up more footage during videos. Look for Black Star Movement International, global, worldwide. When I happen to be outside of Africa and making videos there, and Conscious Black Chat. Yeah, this is basically the new installation of just having lives and dialogue about consciousness and Black people, the unity of Black people, and calling all conscious Black Africans African descendants of the transatlantic slave trade, Rastafari, Pan African, pro Black, yeah, the whole Black family. Let's make Africa greater again. Give thanks for the royal moment. Blessed love. Yeah.
It's the only way. Vegas. Throughout the world, Black people are slowly waking up to the realities of life and are in desperate need of guidance and direction to bring about positive change for their freedom and redemption. Black Star Movement Association aims to fulfill that need and presents Conscious Black Chat. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that's about being conscious and black. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. Welcome. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I deal with conscious and black. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. Welcome. Aquaba. They divided us amongst ourselves and colonized our lands. We know pain and suffering, but yet we still stand. Conscious black Africans, black woman and man, one God, one aim, one destiny. Redemption is at hand. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that's about being conscious and black. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. Welcome. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I deal with conscious and black. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. The show that I put black people on track. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. If you did gone, me say welcome back. Conscious black chat, conscious black chat. Welcome. Aquaba.